Okay. All right.
It's rolling.
Is it rolling now?
Yes.
Yeah, are you going to edit this?
Yeah,
Oh,
well.
thank you.
So please introduce yourselves.
I'm Christy Crittenden, and I'm married to...
Tom Crittenden.
And how did you end up at St. Martin's?
I was called by St. Martin's. We were called by St. Martin's I was called to be the associate rector and came in 1991.
And what did you like about St. Martin's, or what made the calling fit for what you were looking for?
I was looking for a good experience as a staff clergy, as a subordinate clergy on a multi-clergy staff, and chose Howard and Park to work under in that capacity.
Where did you come from when you came here?
We came from Alabama, specifically Wetumpka, Alabama, outside of Montgomery, Alabama. I was the rector of a small church there.
What years were you here, and what staff did you work with?
We were here in 1991, 92, and 93, and we left in February 1994. I worked with Howard Park, with Helen Ludbrook, with Betsy Morgan, and with Donna Kerwin.
I assume you worked with specific ministries, possibly one or the other. Did you work with ministry?
I really didn't. At that time, we had 2 children in that short time period, so I was pretty busy. We had Joseph, and the month before we left, we had Conde. We stayed and had Conde baptized here, so I hung out with the young mothers and did a lot of young mother stuff, and it was really wonderful, and just supported my husband's ministry.
And she was involved in community groups too.
I did community Bible study with the Baptist church, but I also did. I was on the stewardship committee, which was a big stretch at the time for a clergy wife.
What were our St. Martin's strengths at that time, and what did you think needed improvement when you first came here?
Oh, this is on the record, huh? I think the strengths of St. Martin at that time were its family orientation and its strong sense of community, a great community life that had church activities, but also it had church facility activities, but also went beyond that and planned special events and occasions to get the church together and have a lot of fun. I think the Sunday school was it was needing work when I came in. That's one of the reasons that I believe that Howard chose me to come to work on that, and we did with Donna Kerwin, and made a lot of progress on developing Sunday school. Had a great Christian education committee.
And the youth grew phenomenally.
The youth grew, they did grow very, very strong when I was here. But also a real sense of leadership among the longer term parishioners. So it was a great balance, I thought, with older leadership and then younger families with energy and participation in the life of the church.
Since our complex has grown over the years, what buildings were there at that time, and were there any plans for future buildings at that time?
Well, we were here when the plans for the development of the new parish hall, were underway, and we left just before the capital campaign for that began. So I think it's called Laird Hall, or Laird.
Laird is the one we
The Laird building,
and then Park Hall is the new one.
right? The Laird building was there,
Mm-hmm.
and
Park Hall was what was added,
Park
and
Hall,
the additional offices.
yeah, and the offices and the entry atrium area was all added just after we left.
many services a Sunday did we have?
We had two.
No, three.
No, three?
We had three. There was like I don't know if it was 7 or 8, but then we had a 9 and
Oh, that's
11.
right, we did. I've been in two services churches predominantly.
Since then, we've always been in two
And before
service
that.
churches, but it was 3 at the time.
Right, there was was it 7:30 or 8? I can't remember. I think it was
Early.
7:30. And then the 9 or 9:15 and then the
11.
That's right, because of that we were able to we were part of introducing more contemporary music
Yeah, I think we were part of that.
at
Genesis,
the
yeah.
middle service. Yeah.
Knowing what you know, what advice would you give us for growing our membership?
Well, what I know is shifted radically in the last few years because across the Episcopal Church and across mainline churches, there's a general decline as the whole population, the culture, is shifting away from Christy and I grew up with the expectation that that's what you did on Sunday. Well, that's not the expectation of the majority of our population. So I guess I would challenge the churches. I'm challenging my church now in Virginia to kind of rethink what it means to be a church and rethink what it means to engage the people outside of the church, how to engage them with matters of faith and spirituality, not specifically to bring them into the church, but just to make sure people know that God loves them and cares about them, and God offers grace and forgiveness and love. In a sense, it's going back to the very earliest church models of just going out and loving the world in the name of Christ, and the world being impressed with that and responding and being attracted to the church. It's hard in sound bites to kind of explain that, but I will put on the record there is an Episcopal scholar, I could say he's also visionary in one sense. His name is Dwight Shiling. He's written some really compelling analysis of where we are, why we got here, and where we need to go, which has been stimulating and motivating my congregation.
So you left us in '94.
Mm-hmm.
Left in '94.
How did that decision come about?
The church the church called me because it had some funds left over from the Laird bequest, and they wanted to bring in an additional clergy. They had two to help grow ministries to families and children and youth. And while we did that, it didn't result in the hoped for significant increase in pledging. So financially the church had come to a crunch, and the church didn't want me to leave, but two things were obvious. One is that financially it was going to become more and more challenging for the church to support 3 full-time clergy. And the other was my call to come and experience that multi-clergy staff and learn and grow and develop under that. It was accomplished, and I'd always expected to spend X amount of time doing that and then going and having my own church. And so Christy and I felt this was a good opportunity. The church financially would benefit, and we would move on as we expected to.
And since that time, where have you moved to? And children, grandchildren, etc.?
Well, tell us about children. We had 2 here.
Well, we had 2 here, and then we moved to Tallahassee, Florida, and Tom was in a church where there was 1.5 clergy, basically, and it was a really wonderful experience. Harrison was born there in Tallahassee, and so we now have a 24-year-old who just went to Africa and in the Peace Corps. We have a 21-year-old who's a junior in college, and we have a 17-year-old who's a junior in high school. And so it was Joseph Cunning Harrison, and then while we were in Tallahassee, it became pretty clear to the children that the children first that we needed to adopt a child, and so we prayed about that a great many years, and then we began that journey. It took us probably 8 years, but we ended up adopting a little girl from China. And so,
But that
but that didn't happen
happen
in Tallahassee. We were
Tallahassee.
there for 13 years, and in the middle of all that, so it became clear to Tom and I that it was time to kind of move on to the next phase. Tom ended up in a church that needed to move, and so we went from a little tiny piece of property to 100 acres with a school that had about 200 to a
236 students.
to a school that had over 600
650,
children. And so it was a really incredible experience of being in a parish where you move a parish and it just turns
Yeah,
out so
so-
beautifully. But we moved, we decided it was time to move, and a couple of churches we looked at, one was in California and one was in Lexington, Virginia. Lexington happens to be very dear and near to our hearts because Tom's mother, who's still alive, lives there. And we couldn't believe that we would actually get to go there, and we are there in Lexington, Virginia. And his mother, who's now 91, almost 92, is still alive with us, and it has been an amazing experience. We did end up getting Sarah while we were there,
In Lexington.
so it's just been, it's almost like an absolutely perfect God calling experience.
So we were in Tallahassee 13 years, and we've been 7 years in Lexington.
I really appreciate your time,
Well, thank you.
and you're always welcome to St. Martin's.
We loved coming home today and being with you all, so thank you.